Welcome to the Happy Black Woman Podcast, where we're on a mission to empower women to transform their lives through personal development and entrepreneurship. We bring you all the information, inspiration, and motivation you need to create a life of happiness, success, and freedom. Now, please welcome your host, the happy Black woman herself, Rosetta Thurman.
Hello, ladies, and welcome back to the Happy Black Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Rosetta Thurman, and happy 2017. I don't think I've said that yet. Happy 2017. This is another fantastic episode with a very interesting guest, Jamie Broadnax, founder of Black Girl Nerds. You may have heard her. You may have seen one of her very lively Twitter chats. So it's very cool to be able to interview her today. Welcome, Jamie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thanks for saying yes to being here. We were just talking before we hit record about how we met. I always like to tell you guys how I met my guests and how I end up having these incredible people on. And Jamie actually interviewed me a few years ago. We determined it was like 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago now. We're in 2017. And she had a podcast on Blog Talk Radio. Now it's like exploded and, it's all professional now. I don't even know, how did you find me? Because I didn't know about you at that time.
I found you on Twitter. I saw your Twitter handle and I went to your website and I just loved your message. And I always look for people, especially during that time, because I had just started podcasting. I wanted to find other Black women entrepreneurs and Black women that were like doing really positive and inspirational things in their community. Mm-hmm. And I had stumbled onto your Twitter handle and went to your site and I just fell in love with it. So I reached out to you and you said yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And it was a fun show. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, it was cool. It was like, I don't know, I hadn't done that many, audio interviews. So it was also a learning experience for me. I remember I was talking about nonprofits. I just, stopped doing my nonprofit work, or I was in the process of that. So to look back at the topics we were talking about and where you were and where I was is really cool. And so now we get to catch up live on the air with everybody listening, which is cool. But, anyway, for everybody who doesn't know or hasn't heard of you, Jamie, tell us a little bit about Black Girl Nerds. What's it all about?
Well, it's an online community and it consists of a website, a podcast. We've got social media channels from YouTube. And obviously our Twitter has been very notorious because there's a lot of live tweeting involved and just a lot of fun ranting and raving on social media. So I've been doing that now since 2012, February 1st, 2012 is when I started the website. And it's a community for Black women that are self-identified as nerds and geeks. And we talk about everything from comics to gaming to sci-fi fantasy, and also things that are not necessarily part of nerd and geek culture, like relationships. And we deal with social justice issues and racism and sexism, because definitely those are things that affect us profoundly as Black women. So it's definitely a lifestyle, I think, probably like website or online community that speaks to Black women and women of color. We invite everybody to be a part of this space. It's not exclusive. And I'm proud to say that a lot of folks that follow Black Girl Nerds are not necessarily Black and not necessarily women. So most of the folks that see the brand, see the tweets, read the articles, they get it. They get that this is a website meant to empower and to show some representation, but it's inclusive as well.
Mm-hmm. We found that a lot too with Happy Black Woman. It's very clearly geared towards Black women. But hey, if you love Black women, you want to hang around us, people just in general, I'm just going to say this because it's my show and I can, that people just love Black women. They love being around us. We are fun. We're interesting. We're everything that we're Black girl magic. And so many people want to be a part of our communities, even though it's clearly for Black women. You'll see white men at my event. You'll see, it's, just people who gravitate towards that level of community. So I love that you guys, kind of experience that same thing. We can have an identified community without excluding anybody, because if you want to come in and you know how to act, then we welcome you. If you don't know how to act, then, that's a different story.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I've just been so impressed by seeing everything you guys are doing, checking in, over the years of how close knit a community you guys have. So, can you speak to a little bit to like what was it that made you want to create this type of community? Because I know a lot goes into this: blood, sweat, tears, labor of love, all of that. What made you want to do this?
Well, back in February of 2012, when I was online, I just did a Google search trying to find websites or some kind of content on the web that spoke to women like me because at the time I just noticed that nerd culture, was becoming very popular and there were TV shows that were the number one show in its time slot doing really well, like Big Bang Theory. And also, all of the comic book movies were getting popular. So people were really embracing this aspect of this subculture that I've always been interested in. I've always been a part of. I grew up in it. I was an avid comic book reader as a kid. So I just thought, wow, well, with this being so popular and everybody's talking about it, where are the Black women in these spaces? So I went on Google trying to see if there's, some kind of group or site out there where I can just be a part of it and be like, yeah, I want to totally follow what you're doing. And I typed it and nothing came up. I typed Black Girl Nerds to be specific and nothing came up. And I just thought that was crazy. I even looked in a Google image search and typed it in and saw images of white women wearing glasses with black frames.
It's so funny.
So that's a problem. So yeah, that night I had some blogger experience. I used to I wrote for myself, but I wrote an independent film blog and I had a blogger account already set up. So I went ahead and started Black Girl Nerds that night. It was really just me and my personal musings. That's how it started out. Nothing spectacular. And then someone emailed me, a published author no less, emailed me like within 48 hours after the site came up saying, hey, I would like to contribute to your site. I really like your message. I really like what you're doing. I'm a Black girl nerd myself. I want to write content on your site with you. And then it became more than just Jamie and her rants and other perspectives, other points of view from women. And one woman became 5 women and 5 women became 10. And now it's become a very large community of contributors and guest bloggers where we're updating stuff daily, several times a day.
That is a beautiful story. I mean, it just started from you looking for something, looking for a community. You didn't find it, so you created your own. There's so many stories like that of women on the show, and myself included, looking for, where is that space where I can be my happy Black woman self. And if it's not there, then to create it. So congratulations on like taking it, not just starting it, but seeing it through. So many people start a blog and 3 months they get bored and then they don't do it anymore.
I mean, I have to attribute that to the contributors and to the guest bloggers that invested their time and resources into building the site, because if it was just me by myself, I definitely would have gotten ADD and just decided to abandon the blog, just like I've done with my other blogs. I've had 3 blogs previous to Black Girl Nerds, all related to film, but I did the whole blogging thing and I'd be interested for a year or so and then I'd drop off. So I'm pretty certain if I had just done this by myself, it would have been the same thing. But I think the difference is that people were actually really super thankful and grateful that this was being created. And people just gave all of themselves to it to show that this is important to them. So whether they would write really just super passionate, transparent anecdotes about their relationships and dating or dealing with, growing up and feeling bullied or feeling othered because they were into books and they were the bookworm and all of the rest of their friends weren't, and being rejected by certain communities growing up. A lot of the women poured themselves into the editorials on the site, and then also the Twitter community, just the live tweeting and people always engaging with me, and I enjoy engaging with them. So that kind of support kind of helps keep you going. So I definitely lend a lot of that to the fans and followers and the writers of the website. Because, if it was just me and I just was talking about what Jamie did yesterday and the day before and whatever, it would not be interesting. And I would abandon the website eventually.
Right. That is so insightful as, we're looking to grow our Happy Black Woman brand. And, it's been Rosetta and, a few experts here and there. But, we're growing to, multi-contributor blog this year. And it's going to be really exciting to see how it expands. It sounds like you got a lot of validation from the beginning from the people that had found you that is something that was really necessary. And so I'm wondering, you said you wouldn't have continued on if it wasn't for that. I'm wondering, how can people who are just getting started, really validate their ideas? I know that for a lot of new bloggers, it's like they're talking to themselves for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, for most people, within 48 hours, they don't get a comment, let alone, someone emailing them. But I know that you have been doing this a long time.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to building an online community, what are some ways that people getting started can work to validate their idea, get the word out about them faster than it usually happens for most people? What are some tips you can give us from your experience?
So I think if you're someone that's interested in starting an online community or you just want to start really small, because remember, I didn't know what I was doing when I was creating this blog. I just wanted to do...
What do you mean? You're a Black girl nerd. Of course you know what you're doing.
I didn't know essentially I was building this sort of online empire between the tweeting and the podcast account and going to conventions. I didn't know that it was becoming what it is, which is an online community. So I was just writing about things that I was interested in. So I would just say, start with your passion. Start by just doing stuff that you don't hear about in other spaces, things that you think other people should listen to or read, and then just really focus on building yourself out that way, filling that void. I think in hindsight, yes, that's exactly what I was doing. But at the time, I didn't know that I was filling a void. I just wanted to see women that look like me. And I just created a blog called Black Girl Nerds and just talked about things that I was interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think anybody can do the same thing.
Yeah.
As far as keeping that sustainability and pushing through that is something that's going to be a challenge. And that's something that you're going to have to deal with. But I think in the long term, if you're passionate about what you're doing, if you're absolutely 110% in love with the work that you're doing, even if you're not getting paid for it, even if nobody's seeing it, I think it's not going to be that difficult to continue to push through it.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that for every, one person that looks at your blog, there's somebody else out there that's really being inspired by it. I think that that's important to understand, that there's folks out there that actually are reading your website, reading your content, listening to your podcast, whatever content you're creating, watching your YouTube videos, and you're actually shaping them in some way. And you may not get that feedback right away, but eventually you will get that kind of feedback. I have people that email me that say, yeah, I've been reading your website and following you for 4 years now. I'm like, wow.
Just sitting back and lurking. I'm like, wow, you could have told me that a long time ago.
Yeah, you could have told me the first part, and I was just not seeing anybody looking at my phone.
Yeah, that's great insight for everyone who is listening and they want to start something. I mean, a lot of our women, our Happy Black Woman tribe, they want to be entrepreneurs, but also a lot of them, they're not ready to take that leap. They just want to create something to put their message out there, start creating their brand. And, of course, you guys know, I think blogging is the best way to do that because that's how I started.
Yeah.
2 blogs now. But what I love that you share, which is so, so important right now, when you started your blog and when I started my blog, there were not as many blogs as there are now. I mean, of course, over the years, everything expands. And so I love that, I get to talk to someone that's been in it for a long time too, because what you said is so important about following your passion and not looking at what everyone else is doing. Black Girl Nerds is unique. If it was just saying what so many other sites were saying, then I don't think it would be as popular. But that's what a lot of new bloggers do. They look at what everyone else is doing and they just think, well, if I replicate that, then I'll be successful. And that's not really how it works. And especially now with so many other blogs and brands out there, you really do want to tap into, what is unique about you, not just to be different for different sake. Don't just go and dye your hair blue just to be different. But actually, there's a lot of blue haired people. You might have to go for yellow or gray or something. You might have to do some rainbow kind of thing. But yeah, it's like, you got to be you. You can't go out there and just try to copy, It's funny. People, I see so much out there online because I'm always online. And so I'll see people like, oh, well, Jamie did Black Girl Nerds. I'll do Black Woman Nerds,
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do that?
Yep, I've seen that. I've seen the copycats. I see people that kind of use a spinoff off of my name. And I mean, that kind of goes with the territory, right? When you become successful in anything, I think they feel honored to be able to try to fall into your footsteps by creating something similar. And they think that that's going to be flattering to you.
Right. And they think it's going to guarantee them success.
Right. And I mean, I think you touched on something really important. Being unique is incredibly important if you are a blogger. I mean, even when I started blogging, which was like in 2007, there was a lot of blogs out there. I was doing movie blogs, but there was a ton of movie bloggers out there. So even back then, I had to set myself apart from what everybody else was doing. And instead of calling my blog the movie blog or something, I decided to focus on independent films that was in New York City, because that's where I was living at the time. So I decided to go super niche in that way. So I essentially did the same thing with Black Girl Nerds, is, focusing on a very niche space. And I think that is something that you have to think about as a blogger, that if you're going to blog about a topic that's very broad and general, don't just focus on the general part of the topic, but really look at something that is sort of unique and niche in a way where, okay, I haven't seen those kinds of discussions. Like Ashley Blackwell, she's a good friend of mine. She's the founder and creator of Graveyard Shift Sisters. And that website focuses on Black women in horror. And she got concerned because she's, someone who's been a horror fan for years. And she's always felt othered in her community because it's always been white dudes going to the horror movie conventions and doing the podcasts and running these websites. And she didn't see any women that looked like her either. And she was concerned about creating a website for Black women in horror. And I was like, you need to do it. Trust me. There are so many women out there that are just like you that need to have a space like this. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to do something that is completely different that you may think, oh, wow, I don't think anybody but like 3 people are going to see this. You will be surprised because everybody else is trying to do stuff that's popular, but nobody's really paying attention to the super niche stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I mean, this is getting so juicy for all of the ladies who are listening. So many of us are always talking about and worrying about, like, are people going to like it? Are they going to read it? Is it going to work? Blah, blah, blah. And I just love what you're saying here today, which is to really focus on what you want to do, what your passion is, and let the people come, let the people follow you. And it's so much easier to create content, put yourself out there when it is something that you like. I know people who have started blogs and quit them because they realized that they weren't being authentic. They were just trying to follow the cookie cutter model, whatever. And after a while, you get tired of it. It's like being in a job that kills your soul. You're not going to last, very long there. Same thing with your brand. It's your brand. You get to choose what it's going to be.
Exactly. I mean, if you're only in it for success, if you're only in it for clicks, getting traffic, getting notoriety, riding off the coattails of another successful blog, it's not going to last. And you will burn yourself out because you're not really in it. You're in it for the wrong reasons. The people that are successful are the ones that really are 110% committed to the work they do because they love it and they don't have to be paid for it. So I think that is the key thing. Like, if you're in it for the money, be prepared to be very disappointed because starting off as a blogger, you're not going to monetize, but it's something that can happen eventually. But I think people need to focus on what does your heart tell you to do? What is it that you feel inspired for, or inspired by, I should say. Don't just focus on what everybody else is doing, because you're eventually going to wind up becoming very unhappy. Mm-hmm. You'll be an unhappy Black woman.
Exactly. You will. He's like, Rosanna told me to start blogging and now I hate my life. So we're trying to give you some tips to avoid that. So, Jamie, I know that you started out with a written blog and now you do podcasts. What else do you guys do as part of the brand? You guys have discussion, you have Twitter chats. Do you guys do anything in person, meetups, conferences?
So in addition to the podcast, we do a lot of live tweeting. I've done some Twitter chats. I'm actually going to be guest hosting a Twitter chat about blurred dating. Blurred is the portmanteau term for Black nerd. So that should be a fun one. But I also do meetups across the country. I visit all the Comic Cons, well, not all of them, but a few of the big Comic Cons. So I go out to San Diego each year. I go to New York Comic Con. I've been to Dragon Con. And we have these great meetups where we forge these great relationships with people in the community, followers and fans of BGN. I partnered with Keith Chow. He's the managing editor of Nerds of Color. They feature prominently Asian American women and male nerds. And he and I got together and we did the Black Girl Nerds of Color meetups. We did it at San Diego and New York. And our very first meetup, as a matter of fact, in San Diego, we had Ryan Coogler as he kind of showed up to our event. Ryan Coogler, the director of Creed and soon to be Black Panther. So yeah, it was great. So that's what I've been doing. And I go to a lot of conventions as well as a panelist, which is a lot of fun to do as well. So I've been doing that. And we also have a YouTube channel. So whenever I go to some of these cons, I'm also press. I kind of find myself doing a lot of things. It's like I'm press, I'm a panelist, I'm doing meetups. So they can be very exhausting at times. But yeah, when you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see some footage of interviews that we've done at different cons. And that's a lot that I've been involved in within the last 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been so excited to see the growth. I mean, when you really have something that catches on with people, it grows really, really fast. I always tell people, like, my first nonprofit blog, it was successful, but Happy Black Woman, it took off like almost immediately. It didn't take that long because there was such a hunger for the content.
Yeah.
Have you guys monetized it all? Like, how do you take care of all the costs associated? Do you do speaking fees? Do you guys charge entry for events? Like, how do you sponsorships? What do you guys do?
I think this past year has been the best year financially for BGN. We actually started a Patreon. I started a Patreon in April of this past year, and that has been incredibly helpful because for the first time, I had been able to pay copy editors, pay writers, pay for trips to San Diego. I had 2 contributors fly out with me to San Diego and I helped pay for their airfare. I had contributors fly out to Dragon Con. I helped pay for their airfare and train fare. So it's great to be able to afford those things. I've been able to upgrade podcast equipment, purchase a new computer. These are things that are very, very important and vital to building BGN. So I am so grateful to all of the supporters of Patreon who really take the time to support not only on social media, but financially support us as well. In addition to Patreon, I do monetize off of ads on our podcast. And that's something that I recently just started that's kind of built up pretty quickly within like the last few months, because what I've been doing is sort of more of a grassroots approach. I've tried to do the whole thing where you try to reach out to a company like Midroll or the Panoply Network and some of these podcast networks that grab advertisers and then, pay you, the podcaster, to have these advertisers appear on your show. But they always want you to have a certain amount of downloads. In this case, the magic number is 20,000. For you listeners, this is really good information because a lot of people don't know this, but they want you to have 20,000 or more downloads. I don't even get that on my podcast. So what I've been doing is actually tweeting out, hey, if you want to advertise on Black Girl Nerds, contact me. I put my email there on Twitter. I also have a newsletter that gets distributed out to like 6,000 subscribers, and I put it in my newsletter, and people have responded. So I've been running ads now on the last 4 podcasts, I think, and have been monetizing off of that. And then a little bit of monetization on the website. It's not a whole lot because we don't get a whole lot of traffic on the site. I have done some appearances at universities and gotten speaking fees for that. And I'm trying to be more proactive in asking for speaking fees because someone kind of hit me to the fact that, that a lot of these universities have honorariums. And I'm like, what's the honorarium? And so I had to get schooled on how that works. So yeah, if you're somebody that's prolific, you're a social media influencer, and you have somebody from a university or college asking, hey, can you come to my school? Tell them to pay you.
Yeah. Just
they
ask.
Have the budget.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yes. They have the money to do it. So that's what I've been doing. And then I got a book deal. So that's been pretty cool. And my book is coming out in April of 2018. So just in this past year in 2016 has been a pretty good year monetization wise. It took me 4 years to get to that point, but I did get to that point. Now, am I at a point where I can actually leave my day job and do this full time? No, I'm not at that point yet, but that's the goal, obviously. But for now, I still have a day job that I do that pays my bills, and then I do BGM when I come home at night.
Wow. Well, there's a lot. There's a lot you just said in that question, just in terms of how to monetize. That might be the name of this podcast. I never know what to call the podcast until after it's, created. So, great ways to monetize, but also you talked about the time that goes into it. You can't just be in it just to make money because it's going to take a while to build up that community, that traffic. I always tell people, look, if you're trying to make money, you should sell some services, not start a blog. That's important. But if you're just going to want to monetize your blog, you got to give it some time to build up your traffic, your readership and all of that. And you put in that work. And now it just sounds like incredible opportunities are coming to you and you get to choose, pick and choose what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many people that are doing the work that I'm doing that's in the same situation as me, where we're all working hard on our blogs and our podcasts, but we do have day jobs. So it's a struggle. It's a hustle at the same time. But I think once you get to a point where at least you're monetizing enough to pay for traveling, pay for going to cons, doing the things that you enjoy doing, or even paying to upgrade your equipment to do the kind of work you're doing, that's a great payoff as well.
Yeah. It definitely justifies all the time that you spend, doing it.
Exactly.
You get to everything that you want to do is paid for, So
yeah, exactly.
I want to know just how do you do it? Because so many of our women in our tribe, they have day jobs, and I had a day job for a few years before I went full time. How do you stay focused and productive? Are there any tools or strategies or practices that you do to produce so much? I know you don't produce everything, but you have to manage, all the people that are helping you. So how do you do it all?
I don't know. How do I do it all? I really don't know. I think I'm grateful to have a job where there's not a lot demanded of me. So in between times where it gets really slow, where there's a lag, I'm able to do some stuff with BGN. And personal life wise, I don't have any kids. I'm not married, so I don't have any commitments to anyone but myself. So that helps me have, carve out some time to focus on BGN when I'm not working. So yeah, I've managed to kind of balance this pretty well, but I have to say it's getting harder and harder each day. As this brand grows, as more people are demanding of my time, as I'm getting involved in more projects. I just recently involved as a managing partner for a convention that we're doing in 2018. So I'm doing a lot more probably now in 2017 than I've done last year. And it's definitely becoming more and more challenging by the day.
It just goes to show, though, that even if you have a full-time job, you can still do a lot in terms of building your brand and all of that. Setting yourself up to quit, don't quit your day job yet, but you can do a lot to build yourself up to that point. Is there software that you guys use, like Google Calendar, to organize all the contributors and your podcast episodes and your travel? Do you have an assistant? Are there any tools or software or support that you can recommend?
So I started a Slack group with Black Girl Nerds, which has been incredibly helpful because it's just a great way for all of us to communicate And Slack has that great feature where they have different channels set up. So I have a channel for conventions, a channel for contributors that do film reviews, contributors that do TV reviews. So it's very structured in that way. And I use Google Calendar. It's everything. I would die without it. So I use Google Calendar to schedule appointments all the time. And I actually use Google for a lot of things as well, like Google Sheets for Excel spreadsheets. So we use that whenever there's cons that we're going to be covering as press. We'll use those sheets to kind of organize, okay, where everybody's going to be, what time, who's going to be covering it, X, Y, Z. So yeah, that's pretty much Slack, Google Sheets, Google Calendar. I don't have an assistant, but I do have a lot of people that help out with BGN and take on certain projects themselves. So that's, definitely taken a load off of me.
That's awesome. I love that you guys use Google so much. It's, a tool that everybody can chime in with and definitely helps to cut down on all of those emails back and forth, which is a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So Google Calendar, Google Sheets, really having other people, even if they're not paid staff. What I took away from what you said is that you don't have to have paid staff to, build your brand. You can have people who help out, which are pretty much volunteers. And of course, what they get out of it is they want to be a part of the community. They want to help it grow. And maybe there's some exposure in it for them, if they're contributing to your site and things like that.
Yeah. I think for anybody that wants people to help out and don't have the budget to pay them, give them some sort of incentive for working with you. So with BGN, BGN's grown to the point now where, like the other day, we had an article on Hidden Figures published and Janelle Monáe retweeted it. So like BGN is getting so much visibility that celebrities retweet our articles, celebrities follow us. Mm-hmm. We have them on, we're able to get them on the podcast. So there's a lot of visibility opportunities with being a contributor of Black Girl Nerds. But then also you can do, which is something that I had done early last year, is send out submissions for internships. So I've signed off on a few internships with Black Girl Nerds with several girls that have helped with our newsletter, with our social media accounts. They do like the social media curation and also writing editorials on the site. So that's very helpful. Obviously, if you want to earn internship college credit, is to have people help out with your website or your brand that way.
That is awesome. Wow, this is so great. So many people will get a lot out of this episode because of all the practical tips that you shared. But it really, to me, always goes back to like you looked for Black Girl Nerds, you didn't find it, and then that day you created it. So to me, it's like the biggest lesson we can learn from you is, start now. Start now, because one of my favorite quotes is by Karen Lamb, and it says, "A year from now, you'll wish you had started today."
True.
Yeah, because people are going to say, "Oh, well, Jamie's got this, and that, and that." Okay, but that was for, how many years ago that she started out. So it's so important to start now. That would be what my takeaway is. But if you could give, one piece of advice to a woman that is just starting out in her journey, knowing what you know now, what piece of advice would you give her?
Don't give up. Just keep doing what you're doing. Even if you're not seeing the benefits or the rewards of your work, the fruits of your labor, just keep at it, because you're carving out an imprint, whether you know it or not, that's having an impact on somebody. So, just focus on what you're passionate about, what you love doing, because if you're not in it for if you're only in it for superficial reasons, it's not going to last. We went over this already, but I just want to reiterate that point because I see that's a common mistake among new bloggers. But make sure it's just something that you are like, you know what, I could do this all day and not get paid, and I would still love it the same. And just be consistent with it and be diligent in your work, because eventually it's going to put some pressure to where people are going to be seeing your work. I think people respect bloggers that update their content all of the time than those that just periodically post here and there. There's a saying, out of sight, out of mind. And if you're neglecting your website, then your readers and your followers will do just the same. So, You got to treat what you're doing like a job, but like a profession, not like just, okay, a job, clocking in, clocking out, but like a profession. Like, this is your career. I mean, that's how I treat Black Girl Nerds. It's technically not my career because I'm not making career money off of it, but I treat it like it is. So you should definitely do the same. And, the opportunities will definitely come.
Yes, beautiful message for everyone. Be consistent, be diligent, do what it is that you want to do. And even though you may not see the results that you want, because, you might be comparing yourself to someone who's way far ahead of you, to keep going, because those are the people who get rewarded, not the people who, dabble, here and there. So thank you so much for that. So, Jamie, you've given us so much wisdom in a short amount of time. I know people are going to want to stay in touch with you and be connected to your community. So how can they do that?
Certainly. You can go to the website, blackgirlnerds.com. If you go to the website, there's a pop-up where you can fill in your email information and get our newsletter. We give you updates about editorials, about live tweet events that are happening, about convention appearances and meetups that we're having. Also, we have a store where we sell merchandise. So whenever there's sales, that will be in the newsletter. So definitely sign up for our newsletter. And then we also let you know updates of podcast episodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Black Girl Nerds, or you can follow my personal account at Jamie Broadnax. I always follow back on my personal account. And the podcast, you can find it on all of the major live streaming apps, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music. We're on Spotify as well. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for being on the show and for sharing so generously everything you've learned over the past few years.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to make a shameless plug on your show, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I just launched a new podcast with Stephanie Williams of The Lemonade Show. And the name of the podcast is called Misty Knight's Uninformed Afro. So it's a podcast about Black superheroines. And we talk about all of our favorite Black women superheroes, from Storm, Misty Knight, Monica Rambeau, Vixen, Amanda Waller, the whole nine. So please tune into that. It's currently on iTunes. You can find it on Stitcher as well as SoundCloud. So it's called Misty Knight's Uninformed Afro. And I'm really proud of it because I executive produced it and went the whole nine with the whole, getting a sound engineer, getting a web developer, getting a great podcaster who's got really great experience, and a music engineer, and getting a team of people. And we worked really, really hard on this. So definitely check that out. And the podcast premieres on February 1st.
Wonderful. That is so exciting. Congratulations, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I mean, I know how hard it is to run one podcast, let alone two. So, wow. So much inspiration in this episode. Thank you again, Jamie. And make sure that you guys go and check her out, Black Girl Nerds, on Twitter, on Facebook, on iTunes, Stitcher, so that you can follow and really see a model in the online world of someone who has really been able to turn her passion into something really fulfilling, meaningful, and, financially rewarding, as it's just getting started with that. But we know that I don't think you'll get your day job very long.
I don't know if my boss would appreciate that.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you haven't had a chance to listen to our previous episodes, make sure you go to happyblackwoman.com/podcast. You can listen to all of our previous episodes. Jamie is just one of our incredible expert guests who have been sharing from the heart, freely and generously, of their expertise, their knowledge, and inspiration just for you. So make sure that you go back, you can binge listen over the week and get caught up. So until next time, have a beautiful day.
Thank you for joining us on the Happy Black Woman podcast. If you want all the show's notes from today's episode, go to happyblackwomanpodcast.com. Plus, we'll send you a copy of Rosetta's free life mapping workbook. We look forward to empowering you next time. And until then, do something this week that makes you happy.